Hello and welcome to Con 712, Quantitative Analysis and Communication. This video is going to cover the types of hypotheses that are used within research. We're going to look at the different ways that a hypothesis can be written. We're going to look at some examples and then talk about what the differences are between them. The purpose of this video and this mini lecture is to help you understand how you should be writing your hypothesis and what does it mean when you're using certain phrases. Take a moment and look at the definition of a directional hypothesis. So within a directional hypothesis, you're using two variables and you're looking at the relationships in their different forms. The keywords are very important here because it helps us understand what direction the relationship of these variables have. So you use buzzwords like higher, lower, increase, decrease, positive, negative, more, less, because you're helping describe the type of direction that these variables are flowing. And so when you make your educated guess or hypothesis, when you're making it directional, you're telling the reader what direction you expect the variable, how they're supposed to interact. So let's look at an example. We're going to look at a directional hypothesis right now, and this is a relational hypothesis. A relational hypothesis, is going to focus on the relationship between two variables, specifically looking at how they interact with each other. So let's look at a sample topic. First one is looking at dating among college students, and we're going to use two variables. The first one is physical attraction, and the second one is shyness. So our sample statement states that there will be a positive relationship between physical attraction and shyness. This will be considered a directional hypothesis in the positive form. That means two things. As physical attraction increases, shyness will increase. Again, we're saying that the relationship between those two are positive, meaning that as one goes up, the other goes up. So for this type of hypothesis, we're stating or predicting that physical attraction will increase and shyness will both increase. In order to look at another type, let's look at a negative version. So we just saw a positive, let's look at a negative relational hypothesis. Again, we're focused on the relationship between the two variables, but we want to look at the direction that they're going in. So again, using the topic dating among college students, we're going to use the same variables, physical attraction and shyness. A sample statement of a negative directional hypothesis would say, there will be a negative relationship between physical attraction and shyness. Because that word negative is being used, that tells us two things. That the relationship between the two variables is actually going to be opposite. So that could mean as physical attraction increases, shyness will decrease. Or as physical attraction decreases, shyness will increase. Because the arrows are going in opposite directions, that can be considered a negative directional hypothesis. And so we're predicting that the variables are actually going to be related to each other in an inverse manner. Another version of the relational hypothesis is considered the null or the non-directional hypothesis. In this case, we're not stating that the variables will be headed in either direction. Instead, we're just going to look at the relationship to see if it even exists. So once again, we're going to look at the topic of dating among college students with our two variables, and a sample null hypothesis would be there is no significant relationship between physical attraction and shyness. In this case, we're stating that there isn't a relationship that is meaningful, that the relationship between these two variables is not important. This also means that the relationship between the two variables at this point is unknown. So we're not sure if that relationship is significant or not. But in other words, we're not going in either direction. We're not saying positive or negative. Instead, we're saying if the relationship is even present. The trick to a null hypothesis is to understand that if this hypothesis is rejected, meaning that there's no support for it, then that must mean that there is a significant relationship between the two variables. In that case, the test of analysis that we would use to run this hypothesis would be a correlation. That means in SPSS, you would run a correlation between the variables physical attraction and shyness.